welcome to Desert Wanderers, produced by Salt and Light Radio. If you're new here, we bridge the gap between you and the person in the pew next to you. I will be interviewing priests, religious, and laity in our local Boise diocese, asking questions that'll help you navigate your vocation and help build community wherever you are with whatever resources you may have. Let's build the city of God together. Hi, Beth. It's so amazing to have you on today. I'm really excited to talk to you today because it's Ash Wednesday and we are going to be talk about fasting. So I think for my viewers, they might not have heard of you before. So I would love to just get into your background and your coaching that you do and kind of tell us your vocation story, I guess, when it comes to Catholic fasting.
Thank you, Natalie. It's so great to be here. I am so appreciative of your time and how fun that I met you through my client, Rhonda, who is your aunt. I just love that. True. I love that. It's a small Catholic world and it's so beautiful. So she's an amazing person. And if you guys want to hear it, she also has she's on one of my podcasts. So she's out there. So
I'll link that down below for sure.
Please do that because she's fabulous. Woman, I love her so much. Okay, so you know what? I am a devout Catholic, and I'm the youngest out of 8 children. And wow. I grew up with mom and dad who were amazing, and they have passed, but they are going to leave, or they're leaving a legacy of over 100 grandchildren. That's grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren. We are all married, all 8 of us, and we are all alive and well and friends and married to our original spouses, no divorce. So they did something really right. I mean, it's just they were fun and they were incredible. And they suffered, it was really hard to have 8 children and to raise them this way. And so they showed us what redemptive suffering was by being incredible parents. So I have that behind me, and so I am married to Mike, 35 years. We have 3 adult children. 2 are married. Each one of them has a grandchild who I love, each one of them. And then they're having another one, each one of them. So that'll be 4. And then my little one, my youngest, is dating a guy who will probably get married soon. And, all is happy in the Bubik family. So that's where we are. All of my kids are in the church. And we're very close. So that's my story. So I'm a degreed engineer from Purdue University. My entire family went to Purdue, including my husband, where I met him. And so we love to solve problems and we love to make people's lives better. I've always studied theology. As long as I've been living. I'm a self-help junkie. I've never been the numbers engineer. I've always been the sales engineer, presentations. Yeah. And my husband is super numbers. And so it's cute. Yeah. So it's really fun. And so I came into spiritual fasting very early in my life. I can remember being young, maybe 5th grade, 6th grade. And my uncle was a priest, my mom's brother. And I actually wear his scapular. So he's deceased. He was older and a wonderful man that used to talk about spiritual fasting along with his 2 sisters who used to go around the world with all the apparitions. And they actually introduced me to Garabandal, back in the day, back in the late 80s, early 90s, when it's just kind of coming up on anything. They love Medjugorje. They love Fatima, Lourdes, everything. So I would sit around the table and I would hear about this and I would think that is so cool. But as I got older, I tried just do store-bought bread and butter, and water. And I just couldn't do it. I was like, I don't know how to do this. It was just interesting. And I read all the books on Medjugorje and everything. And I really couldn't do it. And I sort of would go in and out of that just during Lent. And I was never successful. So I was successful at dieting though. And so I dieted 30, 40 pounds on and off all my life. And kind of had my soul over here and my body over here. And I wasn't really linking them together as a composite. Right. Yeah. And so when I discovered the life coach school and Metanoia Catholic, these 2 coaching schools, at the secular life coach school in 2020, I learned about the role of insulin when consuming sugar and flour and even alcohol. It's a little bit of a separate subject, but it's kind of linked in there. And how that is the reason why most of us can't fast, go any time without food, is because we're consistently sugar burning, which means our body just wants the sugar, it stores it as fat if we're not burning it. And then we never really go to our fat source or fat adaptation. So that's called ketosis. But she put it in a way that was so fantastic. And then she introduced me to the thought model, a practical Thomistic model of how to manage your mind and your thoughts. And so I was like blown away. And I was a sales engineer at that time, and corporate sales, and thinking I'm going to be a coach one day because I love this. I love this. And then I got to the Metanoia Catholic, which is the Catholic life coaching school. And they're the ones that gave me the true body soul composite information. Again, St. Thomas Aquinas. So St. Thomas must have me in his sights. Thank God. Thank God for him. And I learned about the ontological man and how our brains work, and it was compatible with this thought model. And so the two people who run the Metanoia Catholic School of Life Coaching, she was also in the life coach school. So she knew the model from there, and she realized it's Thomistic. They did all the study about the ontological man, put that together. And so that's where I got all that information. So that's all in my book, Delay and Pray, available on Amazon.com. I mean, I go into detail about that. And that's where it came together. And so I was like, one day I was thinking, okay, I see where I'm missing the spiritual fasting. I see it's this consumption of daily sugar, flour, and not necessarily alcohol. But guess what we just came out of, like in 2020, when I was ending all of these life coach schools. After, they were a year and 6 months. So it was 18 months of
wow.
certification, right? We were ending COVID. And COVID was like a big snow day in some ways. Like everybody was home, like my kids were home, my husband was home. We seemed to be like popping a bottle of wine every night because we were like, what's going on? We don't know. And making chocolate chip cookies. And it's just like we were really out of it. Like, just like part fear, part exhilaration. I don't know if you remember back in those days, it was like a really strange time. And people were gaining weight. They say the average person gained like 15 to 20 pounds.
No
Did
way.
you know that? Yeah.
That's crazy.
So I had gained all this weight. And at the same time, my mom was in a retirement home and she was 91. And she was just, oh my gosh, so fun. Such a fabulous lady. And being the youngest, we were best friends. And so as the months went on, we were dropping off food and waving to the second floor window. But then after the months went on, she started getting really sad and really sick, very lonely, very isolated. Her particular nurses had quit because they didn't want to be vaccinated. So they had to go, and all this stuff happened. And it came to a point in November of 2020 where she would call me just sobbing and crying. And so I got my sisters together and I said, you know what? We need to fast and pray. Let's delay. I didn't have the wording delay and pray then, but I'll just talk about it now. Because I was like, let's fast off of or delay sugar, flour, and alcohol and go to mass like every day, go to adoration, go to confession, really weave the sacraments totally into our lives and just plead for God to let us in this retirement home or bust her out. Like somehow, because this was the first time that all my brothers and sisters, we were not all on the same page during COVID. It seemed like the older ones didn't want to take my mom out and the younger ones did. And we were kind of fighting. And for the first time in our whole lives, this was happening. And it was tumultuous. And I've talked to other people and they said same thing happened in their families. It's like everybody had a different perspective of wearing a mask, not wearing a mask, getting in there, not getting in there, what they're going to do with their parents, all of this. And it was very difficult. So it was a very difficult time. So we fasted and we prayed. And within 3 weeks, we floated into that retirement home, floated into my mom's room. And I laugh because if I don't laugh, I'll cry. But I can remember the first time she looked up and she goes, Beth. And she was in horrible state, horrible physical state, horrible mental state. And so we were able to nurse her back to health around the clock until she died on January 4th, 2021. And it was like, oh, and she had some problems even before COVID. And so we knew she wasn't going to live like for years and years, but
Yeah.
we just didn't want her to die alone. And so her funeral was so happy because we were with her, and we laughed during that time, and we cared for her and loved her. And now, and at the time, my nephew was a priest, Father Jacob Meyer, and he was able to give her last rites, and we were there, and it was so sweet. It was like, oh my gosh, and it was all because of spiritual fasting. And so that's what I want people to know. Saint Chrysologus, he says, prayer knocks, fasting obtains, and mercy receives. So, we knock with our prayer, and then we really facilitate the miracle when we fast. And then out of mercy, the Lord gives us these gifts, and out of mercy we receive. And so we were waiting, and God came through, and that was like our first of many, many miracles. And so that's kind of in a nutshell, like how this all started. And of course, I always say, of course, my mother is going to show me how to put this together, because she's always showed me how to do everything Catholic her whole life. So this was her last gift to us. And so, yeah. And so that's how I started. I'm like, okay. And then I had one of my first business coaches. She helped me come up with Delay and Pray. And that it's so easy to remember. It's like, oh my gosh, it's so easy to remember. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have a question for you when it comes to the history. So like just offline right before we started filming, you had mentioned some of the history, just like very briefly in a one-off sentence. And I had the thought, like, when we're thinking about Fat Tuesday, really, it's like load up on all the stuff you're going to give up now, because you're not going to have it for the next 40 days. And you were explaining that that's not necessarily the case. So what is the history of, maybe can you go into a little bit of like a Fat Tuesday, but also the history of fasting, and maybe like the theological reasons of why we fast, and what kind of spiritual gifts that gives us through the Spirit. So kind of give like the background before we go into more of the practical.
Okay, let's start with fasting, and then we'll go into Fat Tuesday. So fasting has always been a rule of life or a regimen for all Catholics. And even the Jewish people before Jesus, came. And so the Jewish people used to fast on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And to set the Catholics apart, we decided to fast on Wednesdays and Fridays very early. And it all revolves around the Eucharist, the Last Supper, the first Mass, the first priest on Thursday. So we fast in preparation for Thursday, and then we fast. So then we break out in celebration on Thursday. It's not a feast day, but I mean, it's like, so we're fasting up to taking the Eucharist on Thursday, and then we fast again for Holy Saturday, and then we have our feast day, which is Sunday. And so like it's always been around. And everyone will tell you a different story of like why we fast, during those days. But we do know that in the Catholic world, we fast predominantly Wednesdays and Fridays. And how we fast is really kind of up to you. We know that the best fast is bread and water, and that would be coming from Medjugorje, but I've heard a little bit about Fatima and some other ones as well. But bread and water, bread being a symbol of the Eucharist. So why bread? Well, because bread is a sustenance, and it sort of is like the symbol for the Eucharist. So it's so beautiful. So you should go on Wednesdays and Fridays to Mass and take the Eucharist, and then fast off of regular food and onto bread and water. Now, I don't teach bread and water in my course because it's not easy. You have to go through quite a bit to get to the bread and water. Okay. And so I start off with fasting off of sugar, flour, and alcohol, because right there is the reason why we fast. We want to get rid of our attachments. Mm-hmm. And the best way to get rid of our attachments, these obstacles to God, is to fast off something, and it'll bubble up to the top. So people know if they're sugar addicted. Everybody knows. Like, there's not one person that has emailed me and said, I'm not sure if I'm sugar addicted. The emails I get back are, I am so sugar addicted because I can't stop eating it. especially when bad things happen, especially when adversity or
Mm-hmm.
chaos comes my way. In order to do a hard thing, I have to lessen the impact by tamping it down with a little food. It's usually highly processed food, which has sugar and flour and chemicals and fat in it. Or it's a glass of wine at the end of the day. And I'm not talking about alcoholics here or people with eating disorders at all. In fact, I don't work
No.
with alcoholics and I don't work with people with eating disorders. That's out of my realm. But I just work with people like myself who after COVID kind of got used to that glass of wine every day and who
Mm-hmm.
got used to just like chocolate chip cookies hanging around and eating them all the time. And I've always been an exerciser too. That was not helping. And so I was like, okay, wait. And so first of all, if we really want to fast and please God, like Jesus is asking us to, because in Matthew, he says, when we pray, when we fast, when we give, that means he's expecting us to do all three. And so, okay, how do we fast? Well, if we try to figure out this sugar link, which I just call it sugar, but when I say sugar, I'm talking about simple carbs
Like
that
glucose,
really,
like
oh
anything that
yeah,
would spike your glucose.
exactly. So then you take that into your body, then it spikes your glucose, you have an influx of glucose, and then this awesome fat storage hormone called insulin comes out, cleans up your bloodstream because you can only have like a couple teaspoons of sugar, glucose at one time, cleans it all up, um, actually puts it into your cells and then puts it into, your muscles and your liver until we've packed those. And then everything else is stored as fat to be used later. And women's and men's bodies are very different. Women, it's harder to lose the fat because, we make we have the babies, house the baby, and the baby needs sustenance. So, God made our bodies so that it'd have a little extra sustenance in case it's needed. So we should love that. Like we shouldn't be in love with the skinny person. Like that's not where we want to be. We want to be fit in body and soul. We don't want to be overweight. We don't want to be obese. We don't want to do any of that. But we certainly just, virtue is practiced in moderation. So we certainly just want to be healthy, fit in body and soul. So your weight matters and God cares about all of our weights. And that is the one thing I learned in both of the life coach schools was like, the Lord loves me where I'm at, no matter what, 30 pounds, 50 pounds, whatever it is. But in order to do my mission, I need to be healthy.
Yeah.
And also at that time, I was kind of looking at my blood work and it wasn't great. And so I was like, wow, what if I try this ketosis piece, which means just kind of, and I didn't count carbs even. All I did was just kind of look at sugar and say, okay, I'm not going to have that. Instead of having ketchup, I just had mustard. And I had a real why that makes me cry. I like had a motivation because I realized that that's what made me delay the sugar, flour, and alcohol with my mom. She was my impetus. She was my why. And I had her in my heart. Like I was going to do this and my sisters did too. So when it came about after she died, when I went into that first Lent after she died, and I started my first class with some ladies from church and my sisters, my next why was the healing of our family, my brothers and sisters. It
Mm.
was devastating. Like the things we said to each other, and I had a huge part in that. As I was mad because of my mom, because she's my best friend. I said things I didn't mean. So I started to really crawl into that side wound of Jesus during Lent. He actually gave me that image. I remember, and by Easter 2021, we were healed. We were healed,
Wow.
and I was in complete forgiveness of everything. I literally was like, hey, listen, I'm so sorry for what I did, for what I said, and it was wrong, and I didn't even mess around with, but what you said also was wrong. I never said any of that. I just said, please forgive me. It's all about me. I'm so sorry. I did it. I'm so sorry. Let's get back together. And it was like the Lord instilled in me, like just complete and total forgiveness and humility of just being back together because I loved being part of this huge, big, happy Catholic family. And he restored that. He restored that. And we're back. I mean, probably better than ever. So I just want people to know that fasting is not just for Lent, but it is. But it's also, I call it ketosis to kenosis to theosis, which means you go into ketosis just during the week. and you let go of the sugar and the flour and the alcohol, over time, sometimes you have to add in a cookie on Tuesday or a glass of wine on Thursday. Sometimes you have to go slower, right? You can't just like,
Yeah.
all
Right.
right. So it's okay. Eventually your desire, you take that desire to adoration. Please change my desire for these things. God does as he works on your heart. And then pretty soon you find yourself into this beautiful state of chemistry. It's not a diet. It's a state of chemistry in your body called ketosis. And all of a sudden you're dropping the weight, but you're dropping like you have room for God. So you notice at Mass that you literally have more room for him. And then that goes into kenosis, which is attachment. So you're detaching from the alcohol, you're detaching from the sugar, you're detaching from the flour. And you're like, I want God more than those. It's a slow process. And then the theosis part is where he fills you. He just fills you up with all of his love and desire. So then it's a little bit more easy to sugar burn a little bit on the weekend and then go back into ketosis. That's called metabolic flexibility, and that's healthy. So that is fasting. So God loves our soul and loves our body, and whatever is good is for the soul is good for the body, and vice versa. So he knew that the ancient people, the ancient Catholics, even the Jewish people, that fasting would help them clear their bodies of food so it could work better. We all know that when we stop eating for a little while, our mitochondria literally are able to take out the trash. Okay. So think of that image, like you put your trash on the street and the garbage truck comes and picks it up. So what if you keep eating all the time and you never give and it's bad food. Okay. Because there's a combination of things. But you never take a break from eating and you just keep putting out the trash. You keep putting out the trash and the trash truck never comes. Well, fasting is when the trash truck comes, takes out all of the bad stuff in your body and just sets, new cells down so that we can renew, we can restore ourselves, rebuild. And this is the process of our body. It needs to rest from food a while so that it can rebuild. And that's where you get a really healthy state of living. So ketosis, I believe, was always meant for us to live primarily in ketosis and then sugar burn a little bit and be metabolically flexible.
Yeah.
And it's but you shouldn't be in ketosis 100% of the time. That's where people fail. They're like, I can't do it. Well, it's true. It's true. The only people that I know of that are in 100% ketosis, and by the way, this is very new, new research, are people like with brain tumors, breast cancer. We know that cancer cells like to grow. We know that they feed on sugar. So there's a lot of new information out there that says that if you can go into ketosis, if you do have some type of a disease, and it will help whatever treatment you're on to work a little faster and a little better. And so I'm actually studying all of that right now, and it's just beautiful. So I see now that God was just drawing me into this whole phenomenon of fasting is good for your soul. It's good for your body. It's good for both. And it's also needed today to cast out demons. We all need to do it, not only out of our families, but just out of the world, right? Like stopping wars and hurricanes and you name it.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a couple of questions to follow up. So, one of the first things I wanted to talk about is, so you're talking about keto, and a lot of people do keto. One of the things I think you find the most interesting is that metabolic flexibility, because you hear a lot of people that go on paleo or keto, and it's like, it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle, right? That's what they say, right? Because they're like, we should be on it all the time. But again, I like the idea of this metabolic flexibility and having the ability to go back and forth without getting, or what my mom would say is, inflaming our sugar demons.
I love it. Yep. They used to call it the sugar dragon. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I find that all very interesting. But the one thing I wanted to talk about was like diet versus fasting. And then, and I really want to touch on body image, because sometimes, what I've noticed is that people are like, oh yeah, I really want to fast and I really want to diet because I feel like I need to be a certain weight. Mm-hmm. Right. And I'm not saying that. I like what you said about being healthy and I know that I'm not like trying to say like people shouldn't try to lose weight to be healthy. That's not what I'm saying. But
Right.
I almost notice that there's like people that the number is more important than your ability to be healthy at like whatever you're trying to function at, like whatever
Exactly.
level you are. So my question on that is like, how do you address those kinds of concerns, or how should we, as we're going into this, how can we clear our mind in a way to make sure that we have the right focus going into this and the right like what should I say, like disposition
Hmm.
to
I love
fasting,
it.
spiritual
Hmm.
disposition, versus being like it's about a number or about a diet or about how I look a specific way. So
Yeah.
yeah, we'll have you touch on that.
Awesome. Okay, so first of all, let's do the diet versus like spiritual fasting. So the reason why diets are so hard is because they're self-centered and they're ego-centered and they're about me. So they're about the individual. So like when I'm stepping on the scale in a diet, then what's happening there is I'm kind of, it's almost like my self-worth is tied to that scale and that number. And I'm going to have a good day if that number is going down. I'm going to have a bad day if it's going up. It's like, what did I do? It's self-reliance. It's everything. There's no God in it. So it's like you're just, if you really are just dieting, it's very difficult because you're not inviting Jesus Christ into that weight struggle. So that's number one. And so the fasting, the spiritual fasting, is where you're inviting God into the weight struggle and you're actually embracing the weight struggle because it's redemptive suffering. You're offering this struggle to the Lord for a specific intention, which would be your why that makes you cry. So it could be praying your children back into the mass. It could be, conversion of your husband. It could be a sick child, special needs, whatever it is. And so now you're fasting and you're actually doing it for others. It's all about others. So what we're doing, and it takes time. Everybody wants to snap their fingers and take a pill and be like, boop, it's done. It takes time to travel from vanity to sanctity. So as women, we need to have really deep compassion with ourselves because even though some of us don't know it, we have been fed this diet mentality since we were little. When I coach women, including me, I started my first diet in the fifth grade, and most people started their first diet in the fourth, fifth, sixth grade. And it's just that's most people with like sisters. So I had four older sisters who were always dieting. I can remember the pink cans of Tab, right? And I was like, I tasted one and I was like, oh. And I immediately remember thinking, oh, I have to eat terrible things in order to be super teeny tiny like my sister. I see. I get it. So it's like the diet mentality started really early, like, to be
Mm-hmm.
worthy, as a woman, I should be thin. I should be really thin. Now to
Yeah.
get there, just get there by any means.
That's so
That is so
interesting.
sad.
It's really interesting that you said that. I have two older brothers. And so the diet thing, my cousin who has a sister, they're just the two of them, she was on diets all of the time. And I remember my brothers did have something to say to me. They said, I remember this. I was very athletic, loved playing sports. And I don't know if this is part of the reason, but it might be. I remember my brothers told me, they said, Natalie, you need to play sports and like stay fit, or else you're gonna end up an old unmarried cat woman. So,
Oh my
I
goodness.
never really struggled with like, I never really got the dieting thing. I was like, oh, just exercise a lot. So, I was constantly playing sports and like running and stuff, but it wasn't like I was really worried about food intake. But I didn't ever put the connection. That's probably because I didn't have sisters,
It
and
could
I
be.
didn't have
And
that
then maybe
female.
you didn't, and then plus maybe you didn't have any kind of body image problem
Oh no, I
because,
did. Yeah. I
oh,
was
you
all
did.
Yeah, I was like six, or sorry, I was 5'8" in like fifth grade. So I was really tall. And so even though I
Right.
was skinny, I was still so much bigger than everybody else
Yes.
because I was so tall at such like a young age that,
Yes.
and I'm the same height now, so I didn't grow anymore. I just stopped growing in like sixth grade. But yeah, so like I did have body
Oh,
image things, but it was always like, oh, well, I just need to play more sports. Like, you know
yeah.
what I mean? I wasn't ever
Yeah. Yeah.
really worried about food. But it is really interesting though, because the people that I know that had sisters, they all were into dieting, which I
Yep.
just like, had never put that connection together before. So that's really interesting to me.
Oh, definitely with sisters. And then also, I was kind of pudgy. So like, the three sisters at the bottom, that's the three of us who anchored the family. We came out a little pudgy. Like, I don't know, it's just our DNA. And so we really like there were our two older sisters, they were thin. They're still
Yeah.
dieting, but they were thin and beautiful, drop dead beautiful. And so I think we were looking at them saying, okay, there's the model, right? And then my mom always apologized later, but she was always dieting. She was like 96 pounds when she got married, and she was she'd eat like a lot, drink a lot of coffee during the day, and have like one or two hard boiled eggs. So what she did there was she kind of hurt her metabolism.
Yeah.
And so then she got kind of heavy, and then she was trying to go down, and she would have
Yeah.
loved this program today. Like if she was, I know, so I have their picture right here, and I know she's so proud of me. She's like, oh my gosh, that's it. That's it. That's the ticket. You got it. You got it, girl. And I can hear her like, cause she's just so fabulous. So yeah, you're right. So they were all dieting. And they were just gorgeous people. And it was like, okay, I want to be them. That's okay. So what do I have to do? Oh, drink tab. Oh, eat all this cardboardy rice cakey stuff. Oh, and exercise like crazy. Yeah. So anyway,
Well,
yeah,
and
so I
this kind of
think
goes into my question, because like I have a specific couple of people in my mind that are, their weight is very not overweight at all. Like, and we're not even talking about like a BMI is not necessarily a great indicator of like if you're overweight or not, right? But I would say that their BMI is like really good, and they're still like, oh, I just
24 and under is considered normal, and 25 and over is considered not obese, maybe overweight or
yeah. But like
something
I
like
said,
that.
so the people that I have in mind, I like constantly am like telling them like, you are fine. Like you are super for your age. They're a little older too. So it's like for their age and for their weight, like they look good. And it's like, why do you feel like it's like almost like a need of that, like they feel like they have to have like they have to be 20 pounds lighter. And I'm like, why are you worrying about it? Like you're married, like, like why do you need to worry about those like 20 pounds when you're not even overweight in the first place? So that's kind of like
Right.
where the root of this question is coming from.
So it's so interesting because if they literally start embracing spiritual fasting, then they'll get on this path from vanity to sanctity, because your friends are stuck in vanity because they're just worried about being super thin. Okay. And because that's what the world says that we should be. And we all know that we're fighting the world, the flesh, and the devil. So the world, the culture says, be super thin, be Melania, be Taylor Swift, be whoever. I mean, just be super thin. Okay, number one. And number two, we're fighting our own flesh, which means our passions. And so we
Right.
lost that at the fall. I have that in my book. It's, we lost that integrity, the order of our passions, which means we have to work really hard to order our passions, which means eating and drinking moderately, everything in moderation. That's virtue. Yeah. And then, of course, are we forgetting about the devil and that he can get into our thoughts? Hello, that's follow Father Chad Ripperger. He'll tell you. It's my favorite exorcist. And I quote him a lot in the book. He always says, everybody thinks that he's going to show up in your bedroom and, rah, and be like over your bed. No, all he's going to do is take his little pinky finger and nudge your thoughts. You're not worth it. You can't do it. You're so fat. Oh my gosh. You can't do this. This is ridiculous. This is too hard. That's all. Just these tiny little horrible thoughts that leave you back into vanity and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm such a terrible person. And then pretty soon that makes you feel in despair. And then your actions after that, how you show up in the world, you probably eat. And yes, you could go pray and do that, but you're feeling kind of bad about yourself. And so we have to, take our thoughts captive, like it says in the Bible. I think that's 1 Corinthians 10, and unto Christ. And so we have to start as Catholics taking scripture and pouring them over our lives. And So just last Sunday, okay, since it's Ash Wednesday, just last Sunday, I believe it's 1 Corinthians 15:58, where it said, go at the pace of peace, stand steadfast with the Lord, let nothing bother you, let nothing move you. And so I think about that. I always say, remain unmoved. 1 Corinthians 15:58, I remain unmoved, which means some compare and despair will come into my life. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
social media is one of the things that's really devastating. People don't think it is, but I can get off of social media and I have a very successful business and I just love my life. And I'll be like, oh my gosh, my life is terrible. And
Yeah.
I'll think,
Right.
wait a minute, wait, this is not true. And I'll be like, nope, cast that out, remain unmoved, remain unmoved. And I only go on just to see my own social media to make sure everything's going well. And my social media gal, she makes me do stories and she wants me to do that. And I have to do that so people can get to know me, but it's not my favorite thing. So I go on to see how it looks. And I'm like, okay, it's not so bad. All right. But like, I try not to get into the depths of that because I can really be, I don't know, it's like caustic to me.
Yeah.
Okay, it's that diet mentality. So we have to be careful of sitting in vanity because the devil wants us right there. He wants us in vanity so that we will stop fighting our flesh and that we will just go with the world. And we're not doing that,
Yeah.
there's a psalm that says, our fingers were made for war and our hands were made for battle. And I consider that the rosary, like in prayer, like just say your rosary, get away from all of these things, and just start to travel this road to sanctity. So, because our bodies are the temples of the Holy Spirit. That's what we need to really concentrate on. Is our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit. So, what do I want to put into my body, seen and unseen, um, visible and invisible? And what am I putting in there if this is really the temple of the Holy Spirit? And it's just shifting
Yeah.
your thoughts. And that's what a coach does. A coach is sort of in between, a Catholic coach is in between a therapist and a spiritual director, sits right in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Because I went to school for 18 months for this. And it's just a lot of scripture and a lot of thought work. And that's the Thomistic part is,
Yeah.
we can think about our thinking. We can change our thoughts.
So let's go into the therapy part because I think a lot of the times, especially for myself, if the house is chaotic or if there is some kind of stress, like, and there's, I mean, I try not to keep junk food in the house, but sometimes it happens, right? Or sometimes you make a batch of brownies or whatever and you have them left over. And when there's that stress, right? I have almost 3 year old and a 1.5 year old, and I'm pregnant. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes
Awesome.
it gets crazy. Okay. Anyways,
Yeah.
but that's the time where I'm like, I need something fast to eat. Either I think there's two parts for myself at least. It would be there's stress, so I want something to relieve stress, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go to like some kind of sugar, right? Or a
Right.
sugary drink or carb, like a piece of bread with butter, something very like I said, like that glucose overload because you know that
Mm-hmm.
it'll hit your dopamine and you'll feel better, right?
Exactly.
So there's that, and then there's also the part of just being super busy, and so choosing poor nutritional options because of the convenience of being fast. Like I spend a lot more time making sure my kids have good nutrition than I do because obviously I'm like trying to get things done, and it's just kind of crazy. So let's talk about that part about Catholic coaching is like how do you navigate from like the easy hits for your glucose to dealing with the hard times. And I'm assuming this goes into the redemptive suffering part where it's like
Yes.
it kind of I'm assuming, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that part of this process is realizing that instead of depending on the food, we need to depend on Jesus. So like just kind of help work through that part.
Yes. Okay. So, sometimes you have to ladder to certain places, right? So sometimes we can't go from point A to point B. We have to go in maybe several little points in between there.
Yeah.
Okay. In
Okay.
order to get to, not using food as comfort. So, just as Pope Benedict has said, and I'm sure saints said it before him, is we were not made for greatness. We were not made for comfort. We were made for greatness. Okay. But there's a ladder there. So the first thing you can do, if you still want to make your brownies and you want to make things like that, make yourself some little protein chocolate fat bombs. Have you ever heard of those? You put
Yeah.
them in the
Yeah.
freezer. Okay. And here's the beautiful part about it. They're not quite as tasty as the brownies. So that's a fast, that's a little redemptive suffering. So this is a tiny piece of redemptive suffering for you. So when you're eating it, um, it's not as sweet. It's not going to be a brownie with frosting. But it's gonna propel you into greatness with less comfort. So you kind of start with less tasty things. And it's really funny because everyone I coach, the first thing they come out with is like, well, that's not worth it. I mean, and it's almost like FOMO YOLO is what I call it. It's like fear of
Yeah.
missing out. Like, but what would life be without brownies? Okay, so that's the first thing. And the second one is you only live once. I mean, why not eat the brownies? Okay, so there you go.
Yes.
Here's the
I've had
here's
both of
the
those thoughts.
yes. So you got to kick those out and think of it, shift it this way. You only live once. How do you want to live? Because young bodies right now, your body can probably take the toxicity and it can fully take the load. Okay. When you get older, you may end up with diabetes or with all kinds of problems that we know now that sugar causes. And it's not an overnight thing. It's a gradual thing. So this beautiful body that you have, the temple of the Holy Spirit, you're really putting that in jeopardy. And the Lord has a mission for you. You want to be as healthy as possible to get through your mission. I just read about a woman who's 95 and still plays pickleball. And I play pickleball, and my pickleball partner is 84 in the neighborhood, and we beat people. I'm 60. And so, I mean, I love pickleball, and and so I saw her on Instagram, and I'm like, I want to be her. I
Yeah.
want to be this person at 95. And I'll tell you what, I'm going for the fat bombs in the freezer. I'm not going for the brownies because those fat bombs, they actually fuel my body because they're made of coconut oil, and
Mm-hmm.
fat unlocks fat. Okay. So you have to really study, like, oh my gosh, like Dr. Jason Fung, Dr. Mindy Pels, Dr. Casey Means. I mean, you name it, they're out there. There's some new ones coming, Dr. Nick Norwitz or something. I'm seeing these men and women who are discovering and unlocking the beauty of ketosis. They don't have the Catholic part. Nobody has the religious part, but I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, this makes sense. And so it's just pretty soon you won't need the fat bombs either. Pretty soon you'll be able to walk by the brownies. Okay, so then you walk by the brownies, but then pretty soon you won't be giving your kids the brownies because you'll realize that you're raising their glucose too, and
Right.
you're actually setting them up for possibly a life of obesity. I can say that because my daughter, she has our first grandchild will be 2 in May, and my daughter gives her very little sugar, very, very, very little. And that baby is so healthy. Never had an ear infection, hardly goes to the doctor. It's crazy. Never had an antibiotic. Um, it's crazy. So isn't that funny? See how you're laddered, like how my daughter has laddered over to, well, if I'm not going to have it, why am I going to give it to my children? It's not that she never has it, but I'll tell you something. You put a cookie in her hand on a Sunday, or a special treat, a special time, and yeah, she'll eat it, but she's kind of almost like, whatever.
Your
It's a very,
granddaughter?
uh-huh. It's
Wow.
this is all so interesting to me. So I'm hoping that I'm telling you that, like, you only live once. Think about it. YOLO FOMO. Like, yeah, I only live once and I want to live for Jesus. And I'm willing to ladder over there. Like, I'm willing to go slow and figure out a more healthy snack until I don't need the snack.
Yeah.
Until I can reach and do hard things without comfort.
Right.
Yeah. And then I'll coach people and they'll say, yes, but it feels so much better. Like if I have a project to do and I'm at work and it's 3 PM, and nowadays, like a lot of corporations, they have food, snacks, free pop, they have everything. She goes, I just get, Beth, I just get one package of M&Ms and a Diet Coke and I'm soaring. I'm like, I'm just doing everything. And it's just a Diet Coke and M&Ms. And I always say, well, think about your why that makes you cry. What if you passed up the Diet Coke and the M&Ms, went for a quick walk, either outside just for 5 minutes or up and down the stairs if it's inclement weather, you come back and you do the project without anything. And now you've snatched souls from hell. You've literally fasted spiritually. you are going on the narrow road of Jesus instead of the world. And you're starting to believe that you do not need the sugar, the flour, and the alcohol to do hard things. And she was like, well, now that you put it that way. So I hope that helps you, but this is a road that I've had to like discover on my own. I had to go to the brownies and eat half the tray.
Yeah.
And be like, crap, I'm the Catholic fasting coach. And I just ate a half a thing of brownies. This is a couple of years ago, and I was trying to figure everything out.
Well, so, and then here's the other question. So I was going to say, a couple of years, well, I mean, it's probably been over a decade now. My brother was going through a really hard time. And for Lent one year, he just gave everything up but water and bread, literally for the whole Lent, every single day, like for all Lent. So, and let's say at the end of it, he did not look very healthy. He did not look like he was doing well. So I feel like,
what kind of bread? I mean, because it's not nutritional. It's not nutritional. It's,
right.
But you can still do that. I mean, you're still going to get a lot of spirituality, but he should really.
It was. I think it was
seen a spiritual director to make sure that this was exactly what he needed to do.
Right. So, but I guess what I was trying to lead with is sometimes I feel like when it comes to Lent, oftentimes anyone, not just, I think Catholics in general, they either go too hard or too soft. Do you know what I mean? Like they go really super intense. And then as soon as Easter is here, like, the whole point of Lent is to get rid of something for good, right? I don't think a lot of people think like that, or they don't until they're older, but, so
it's to detach.
Yeah,
something
exactly.
that is an obstacle between you and God. I gotta have it. Exactly.
Yeah. So when we talk about that, like, how do you talk to like the other women or other like people just in general when it comes to Lent about doing something that is too intense versus like not intense enough, like not pushing you enough? Because sometimes I even hear people are like, oh, I don't give up anything. I just, pray a decade of the rosary, which is still beautiful, still good. Right. But I'm just saying like too light or too hard. So how do you deal with that?
So my first Lent, I just gave up sugar and flour and alcohol during the week, because I teach an eat, fast, feast cycle. So we eat on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturdays, fast on Wednesday, Friday, feast on Sundays. Okay. So when you're eating, you're just eating in 3 meals, no snacks. That's hard enough. That's how we begin. So like people who just signed up for my course that's open right now, you can actually go to the CatholicFastingCoach.com if you'd like. And
we can link it down below as well.
Yeah. Go ahead and enroll. But the thing is, you're not going to give up sugar, flour, and alcohol for Lent. Like that, it's like 40 days. It's actually 46 days, right? You're not going to do that. So you're just going to start in the program of decreasing sugar, flour, and alcohol during the week, definitely on Wednesdays and Fridays, and feasting a little bit of it on Sundays. Because we can feast on Sundays if we want during Lent. All Sundays are feast days, even during Lent. You can ask the theologians about that. They'll say yes. Okay. So you do that, and maybe you work at it during the year. The next Lent, maybe instead of having, you've already worked your way up to a little more intermittent fasting, instead of 12 hours, 7 p.m. to 7. Now you're on a 16 or something. And so you're literally eating maybe 2 meals. You're eating at noon and you're eating at 5, or you're eating at noon and 6, and then you don't eat anything at night, and you're not having sugar and flour and alcohol during the week. And so and then you're going to want to naturally, that next Lent, like ramp it up. So how are you going to ramp it up? Well, I'm not going to have any sugar and flour over the weekend, but I'll have a glass of wine on Saturday night after Mass during Lent, or all year round, and definitely on Sunday, or I'll have a piece of pizza on Saturday night, and however you want to manage it, but you're still limiting that sugar, flour, and alcohol. Okay. And then you can get to like years later, like me, my husband and I, we are delaying sugar, flour, and alcohol the entirety of Lent, but we've had to work our way up here.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I love that
we've had to plan.
Yeah. I like the point that I think you've mentioned it over and over and over again, in different capacities, that this is something that you work towards, because I agree with you that sometimes, and I think that might go into the intensity part, is like, you can't just go head in and just do it and just
No.
your will is like pushing you through. And I think
Yeah, because that's what we're talking about, like going from Fat Tuesday. Before we got on the air, we talked about people going from Fat Tuesday. In other words, it's Fat Tuesday, and they drink, 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 and they eat, and they have all the sugar, flour, and alcohol that they can consume. And then they're supposed to hit Ash Wednesday and have one normal meal with two little meals that don't equal one normal meal, which, by the way, that's really like ambiguous. It's like a normal meal. Like, what's your normal meal? Is it driving through McDonald's and getting a filet of fish, a Coke, and French fries? Or is it a small salad with a little tuna on it? Like, what is it? And so what they do is they don't want, people are like, oh no, I'm not doing just one meal and two small meals that equal one meal. I'm going to just do water. And then they feel so sick. And then pretty soon it comes to the nighttime and they binge and they're like, okay, that didn't work. Like, yeah. Instead, what if you took Fat Tuesday, which was really supposed to be back in the day when they fasted off of eggs and meat and really anything scrumptious. And they went into super simple meals without meat or eggs, sometimes dairy, all of Lent. But they could do that because they weren't eating ultra processed foods, a bunch of sugar.
Right.
Their fruit was not, genetically engineered to be sweeter. Do you know what I'm saying? It was more wholesome. So their bodies were more metabolically fit. Okay. So that Fat Tuesday was to consume all the extra eggs and butter and all of that, so that, because they had nowhere to store it like we do in a freezer, or they weren't going to throw it out because food was a precious commodity. So that's Fat Tuesday. And then the eggs, that's how we got, the Easter bunny with the eggs, is because the Easter bunny and the eggs is because that's, eggs didn't appear then until Easter.
Well, this year, because of our current egg shortage, I'm sure everyone could get on board with the no eggs.
No eggs. Yeah. Yeah. And so anyway, I just caution everybody on Fat Tuesday just to be careful. Maybe just snack a tiny bit on some things. And then step into Ash Wednesday and kind of plan it out. Where are you? Have you ever intermittent fasted before? Can you go 12 hours? Can you go 16? What if you just had the one meal? What if that one meal had no sugar, flour, and alcohol? Like, that it's just kind of planning, like, where are you? What do you know that you could actually do so that when you wake up on Thursday morning, you really do please God. Like, no matter what, your efforts are going to please God, but it's kind of like planning, like, what do I want to eat, on Fat Tuesday, so that my Ash Wednesday is really a great plan to please God with food and drink. And it does have to be food and drink. A lot of people are like, no, I'm just going to give up social media. I think everybody should give up social media.
I do too. I've done it every year for the last 4 years. It's beautiful. It's great.
Oh, it's great. It'll just clear your mind.
Yeah.
But the food, we love food because without food, we die. And so when you're giving up food, it's really hard. And so you're normal. If you feel that this is hard, you are normal. Like, that's okay. So, but we're just going to do it in small amounts until you can move yourself across the finish line without it during the week. That's it.
Okay, so a couple of other questions on top of that. I really want to get into the spiritual side. So I don't want to take too much time on these next couple of questions, but because I definitely want to go into the spiritual, because it's not just fasting from food. You have to fill that fasting with something, right? So definitely hit on the spiritual. But what about, let's talk about pregnant women and people that have immuno disorders, or need to not fast for periods of times because there's some kind of health issues that people have that they need certain things, right? And children. So when you talk about these women, what is a good way to approach Lent in a healthy way to make sure that they're getting the amount of nutrition that they need and can stay healthy? Because there are some groups of people, obviously, that the church even dispensates, from fasting, right?
Oh, sure.
So let's go ahead and talk about that briefly. Yeah.
Okay. So embracing whatever struggle you have. So I'm mainly a weight loss coach. And so most women who come through my program want to be more fit in body and soul in the way of losing weight so that they're more fit. They want their blood work to go into range, if not in optimal range. And they want to live into mission. Okay, so that's normally who I work with. I do have a few people who I work with who have problems and are seeing a doctor. It's usually a functional medicine doctor.
Yeah.
And that person has put them on a very strict diet. And
Right.
they come in and they're almost crying because they can't have dairy, they can't have corn, they can't have,
Hmm.
coffee, they can't have caffeine, they can't have sugar, they can't have flour, they're gluten free, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And so it's the coaching and the shifting from what I lack, the scarcity of my situation, to what a fabulous way to embrace my struggle and offer up all of this hardship to Jesus and find ways to make myself food that's absolutely delicious and that I can just kind of lean into over time, but know that spiritually I am offering up this hardship to Jesus and asking for healing. So you're
Mm-hmm.
offering up the hardship, but you're asking for healing. Remember, prayer knocks, fasting obtains, mercy receives. So, and that changes the game. So not only are you asking for healing for yourself, but maybe for your mom, your dad, your spouse, your children, something else. And so it really becomes a spiritual journey instead of solely this menu that I'm stuck on.
Yeah.
And we're in a community. So there's a community of over 100 women. And so everyone has like some ideas like, oh, I've been there. This is what I did. And so we're trying to fill up that action line with great things to do if you unfortunately are, you know, have to eliminate certain foods for a while. And it's
Yeah.
usually just for a while. And then your metabolism fixes itself with
Yeah.
God's help. And then you can actually strive into other things. But it's all a spiritual journey. Without shifting into sanctity and having everything be a spiritual journey, it's really difficult. But when you open it up to God to do his mighty work, whew, it happens a lot quicker.
So let's go ahead and talk about the spiritual part now then, because I feel like this is very real for us because my daughter had really severe eczema, and
Mm-hmm.
praise God, literally like this last week we finally got it cleared up. But for the last 6 months we've been gluten free, dairy free, soy free, and tomato free.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling like anyone that is going through that, and like you're saying, it's really hard to plan meals, even
Mm-hmm.
like good homemade meals. It's really hard to plan with like so many restrictions. So like I like what you said about making it more about transforming those hardships, right? Because it is like it is hard to plan for that, right? But let's go into that spiritual
So
part because
okay.
yeah.
And it's interesting because that's just so healthy for her. So in the end, the
We
eczema is a gift because really
right.
to get her started on this paleo away from the sugar and the flour and obviously not alcohol.
And I'm not
Um,
gonna like I'm not gonna make two meals, if that makes sense. I'm not gonna cook two meals. So we've all been eating like this, right? So, yeah,
it's awesome. It's awesome. And you never have to do two meals because what you can do is like, let's say, your family's okay with it, but your husband absolutely is not okay with it. Then you just use her meal as a base and then you add in, I mean, if he wants rice, he gets rice, but nobody else does, but he gets rice. He gets potato or something like that. And that's what a lot of people do is they start with the lowest, the base of what you're eating or what they need to eat. And then you can just layer on what everybody else wants. And that way you're not making a ton of meals. You're just having like options and sides. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, okay, so that's the point. Let's go into the soul part of this
Mm-hmm.
because I think that all of the things that we're talking about without addressing the spiritual part or allowing the
Mm-hmm.
spiritual transformation to happen, it's great for your being, your physical body, but we're mind body composite, right? We're soul
Right,
body
right.
composite. So let's go ahead
Mm-hmm.
and dive into the spiritual aspect of this and like maybe the dispensation or not dispensation, the
The
disposition we
disposition.
need to
Yeah.
have going through this Lent and going through fasting.
Yes, yes. And I kind of, when I think about that, I think about Mary and Martha. This has been so important for me. So if you remember in Luke, the Gospel of Luke, in chapter 10, when, Jesus is stopping by the house of Mary and Martha, and Martha says, I just love what she says. She's like, Jesus, tell Mary to help me. Can't you see that I
Yeah.
need help? and she has like a bowl in her hand, and she's Martha. And then Mary is at the feet of Jesus. And he says, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and worried. But Mary has chosen the better part, and it shall not be taken from her. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. And so when I actually took that scripture over an entire year and fasted and prayed with that, what I realized is I thought my two sisters are so sweet. They're my two little older sisters. They're so quiet and so holy. And I always thought, oh, they're like Mary, I'm like Martha. But that's not the truth. The truth is that we all need to lead with Mary, and then Mary elevates the Martha within us, because when we're at the foot of Jesus, so we go to adoration at least once a week for an hour. We go to at least one daily mass a year, and then add a second daily mass the second year, a third daily mass until 5 years in. Then we have this daily mass. It's one of the ways that
Do
we
you mean when you
actually
say one daily mass a week?
a week.
Okay, good. I
Yeah.
was
So,
thinking like you were saying one a year. I was like,
oh,
that's setting the bar really.
sorry. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. One daily mass a week the first year, 1 hour of adoration, a week, and then Sunday, of course. And then the devotion of adoration, 1 hour a week, and then a prayer life every day, at least 15 minutes, if not 30. And then I have a journal that I take them through as well. And we just do certain pieces of that until you get really used to it and you can do it all. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
then we add a nightly examine, 6 months after. So it's just gradually flowing into the sacraments so that you get the grace of Jesus Christ to help you. You have to have the grace. What I tell them is the delay, the intermittent fasting and all that, that is like you hoisting the sails of your sailboat, and you're hoisting them and it's hard. And then, you hoist them, you put them out, and then Jesus Christ in the sacraments, when you go to the sacraments and you have a prayer life and you have a devotion, he's able to blow through your sails and take your
Mm,
boat exactly where it needs to go.
yeah.
So see, that's the problem with intermittent fasting without prayer, is that you're hoisting the sails, but you're trying to direct that boat yourself and everything. And it's really hard without God to blow your sails where he wants to go. So we always talk about turning towards the divine will or turning towards enemy territory. There's only two choices. You're either turning towards the divine will and the desire of God and his will, or you're turning towards the enemy territory. What's so beautiful is every day I try to turn towards enemy territory, but then I think, oh, wait, oh, I'm turning towards enemy territory. I need to turn towards the divine will. And I kind of re-steer the boat a little bit, with God's help. But it's his grace that helps me turn towards him. So it's just like this beautiful image. And that is the spirituality of the delay, is making sure that you're getting back into the physical church. We even, I even just met some people through scripture study that's phenomenal at our church. We started playing pickleball and we started playing euchre together. And it's kind of like the old times when my mom and dad were, when I was little, and they'd have all their Catholic friends from the church would be in clubs and stuff. Card clubs, and they would come out. They did things together, and they were all Catholic. That's happening again. I can see it in other places as well. And so you're really building a Catholic community, not just in the church with scripture study and Catholic things, but
Yeah.
out of the church with like Catholic activities. And it helps because like this Lent that's coming up, we're going to have like sober Saturday night euchre. And when I say euchre, that's like a card game in the
I know.
Midwest.
I
And a
love
lot of
euchre.
people, oh, you do,
It's
but
definitely
what?
an East Coast. It's an East Coast thing. So I don't know if like many people, I had never heard about it before I married my husband. He's from Ohio. And
Oh, that's why.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And they
Yeah.
have
So
big, huge euchre tournaments and stuff.
huge. Yeah. So anyway, any kind of cards or games or something that you want to play. So we'll get together. We'll do that. And then my husband and I, we work out on Wednesday nights and Friday nights after his work. And so we go and we work out, and we have other couples joining us on Friday nights so that it'll help them with the alcohol, because a lot of people are just used to a couple drinks on Friday night.
Hmm.
Wednesday night's not so hard. Friday night's a little bit harder just because, you have a neural pathway that says, hey, we drink on Friday night, remember? And it's really hard to get out of that. And so you just go do something else. So this particular gym that we go to, it has a power alley where you actually push and pull these sleds of weights. And so I go to my own power alley of adoration beforehand for an hour. And then I go to this power alley for an hour. Yeah, yeah. And then stations in,
Amazing.
It's so fun. And so it's like your whole life just starts to become Catholic. I think we
Yeah.
need to get back to that. That's the spirituality. That also takes work. But if you're working with both of them, you will see that it's just beautiful. It works. That's where you're going to, with a group of people, go from ketosis to kenosis to theosis. That's where that beautiful path to sainthood is. And the Lord will lead you. He's so amazing. And this is quite new for me. I'm in my fifth year of this, but I don't hear it anywhere else. And so I just hired, I have a staff that's amazing, but I'm hiring more people. And I think I want to take this out to the masses. And the Lord is really blessing me with quite a few things to be able to do it. So yeah, so it's so fun. I just kind of think back to my mom and dad and how they had this really Catholic life.
Yeah. hmm With all their friends and how they lived it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the last questions I have for you, and I think this is going to be kind of tie in everything we've talked about so far, is developing the why. Do you think
Mm,
that, and the question is, do you think the why comes in time, I guess? And it kind of ties with what you said about following God's will, right? Choosing God's will in the sale, right?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you think about the why, and when people are going into this Lent and they're starting to maybe take up some of these practices, what are some good thoughts, questions, meditations on the why?
Yes.
Because
We have to work really hard on the why. Well, for some people, it comes easy. For instance, my mom, like when she was dying in that home by herself, I was like, no, that's an immediate why.
right,
Or like when the family was in turmoil, immediate why. But there's a lot of women that come and they're like, okay, my why is weight loss, and Beth has told me that's not enough. I'm like, it's not enough. It can be a great measurable tool, right? Some data you can work with. As
yeah,
your weight is going down, you know that you're doing good things. You know that the food you're eating is working for you. You know that you're cleaning up your metabolism and that your mitochondria, is able to take out the trash. So great, great. All these things are working, and you can do that with a scale. Great.
right,
But I'm just reading from my notebook right here. We start with transformational goals to get very clear about what you want and the why. So the first thing is like, what do you seek? What is your desired result in your life? And in order to do that, you write those down. You have to really think about that. And then the next question is why, and what will it cost you if you don't commit or follow through?
mm,
And then give details to who or what you're fasting for and reflect here. And then questions about the beliefs about the goal, because that's going to be huge, because you have to believe that God has something amazing for you. And as a as we go through these worksheets, we have to go into your past, not to dwell on it, but to learn about your blueprint for food, about your blueprint for scarcity and lack, and how you're actually going to shift from this vanity to sanctity depends on shifting from lack and
mm,
scarcity to abundance in Christ and what he has for you and eternal life with him. And so it goes down, um, I asking you all these questions about believing in the goal and believing in your why and finding your why. And a lot of times, um, a lot of my clients will go through this and they'll realize that I had just had one client who's so sweet, and she was looking for a why, and then she really realized that her mom wasn't perfect when she grew up. In fact, she was you know basically an alcoholic, and just slightly addicted to some pills. And so she actually was kind of mad at her for that. And then when she went through all of these questions, and developing this why, she realized she was her why. And so she switched from what she didn't have and what she didn't get to how her mom did her best, and how her mom really loved her through her addictions. Like she had those addictions for a long time, but in spite of those addictions, she really loved her daughter. And all of a sudden she just started to recall all the things her mom did, even though she was so debilitated by these substances. And so now she fasts for her, and she loves her, and she
oh, so
forgives her.
sweet.
And so can you see, like, but she had to kind of go through questions of like how to find that why, and how to find that actual desire that God wanted her to have. God wanted her to have that why.
Yeah. That's extremely beautiful. Like I can't even think I think it's so beautiful. Um it just makes me it really honestly makes me want to go through the questions myself, to be honest, to be like, yeah, I really would love to find that why. And I again, it's kind of like the thing we talked about at the very beginning is like when we fast from the things that are easy, right? Like when we have a hard time and we want to go for the brownie or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of this, if we have our why set, it's going to set us up for the healing in the end, right? Which is what we're trying to get with the food or whatever we're, using to get to the healing. And I just think that it's such a beautiful like circle, basically, of if you continue to work through the fasting and you work on your prayer life, then it's just going to continue to heal. And it's not going to just heal you, but it's going to heal the people around you as well, right? It all connects. We're all connected.
Well, an easy way to do that without even these questions is, what would, think about your high, like what was the best 2 or 3 moments of your life, like your marriage, the baby, just like, but even before that, like, were you accepted into, med school, or like, like you worked really hard at something and you got it. Like, think about like 2 or 3 of the best moments and like actually feel it and put yourself there, and the people that were responsible for that. Then go to the other side of it and think about your low lows. Like, what has bothered you about things? Where were some low lows? And when you have those low lows, the Lord will bubble up to the top. Like, these are the people you need to be praying for. Like, these are the people who brought
Yeah.
you to the finish line and over the finish line that I gave to you, that I gifted to you. Now, these are the people that hindered you, and they need your help. And so
Yeah.
it's like, this will give you your true why. It's like, if you don't have one, you kind of have to go back into your past, not to dwell there, not to figure it out, just to recognize, oh my gosh, so this was given to me. This is my circumstance. It's a reality. I'm not going to fight it. I'm just going to put my backpack of resilience on and understand that I now need to look back and forgive that person and start praying for that person.
Yeah. Okay. So if someone is listening to this and they are just all about it, they're all about it. They love what you're doing. They love what you're talking about. They're just eating it all up. Where can they find you for more information? Do you have any social media that you'd like to share? And where can they find you and your program?
Yeah, you can find me and my program at my website, thecatholicfastingcoach.com. You can also Google Delay and Pray. That's trademarked and it is everywhere. I have a book, I have a podcast, I have a blog. And so those are, minimal fee, or, the book is, just a little bit of money, and then the podcast is free and all of that. So that you can get information there. But if you want to come into the course, it is thecatholicfastingcoach.com, and you can just get in there and enroll. Or get on the wait list. The doors are open right now today. They'll be closed at the end of the week, so you can get on the wait list for the next one to open the next course. But yeah, just start. This is Lent. This is Ash Wednesday. Just start delaying sugar. Start there. And just see how you do it. And then ask the Blessed Mother to show you your faults and bring your weaknesses up to the front, and then just deal with them. Like, oh, wow, this is what it is. Okay, I got to figure this out. Just take one small thing. Yeah.
Do you have any last
Oh,
pieces of advice or encouragement going into Lent?
I did forget to say that I'm on Instagram and Facebook. So I forgot
Oh,
about
okay.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll link everything down below as well in
Yeah.
the
It's,
description.
it's easy. It's easy. Any advice for Lent?
Yes. Any
Oh my gosh.
encouragement or advice?
Love it. Like, fall into it. Love it. Set Lent apart. Let people know without you talking that you are Catholic. Wear your ashes to work, get them done in the morning so that you can flit around town with your ashes on all day. And then after that, go to extra masses, go to extra adoration, talk about it at work. Say, I'm sorry, I'm going to be late for this meeting because just for 5 minutes because I'm going to mass. However you want to slice it, but set Lent apart. Make it very, very different from any other part of the year, and God will grace you to unbelievable ways. Like, you can't even believe what He will give you back 10 times, 100 times. But this is a grace-filled season. Don't miss it. I love Lent. And I always screw up during Lent. Every once in a while I screw up. That's okay. No chapey, start again. Everything's okay. But really set it apart. Fill your calendar with as many church opportunities and getting face to face with other Catholics as possible. And then think about delaying sugar or flour or alcohol. Just like figure out what is your attachment and give that up and see how you do. You can do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Beth. This was just an awesome conversation. I enjoyed it so much. I had to say, I was like thinking at the beginning of this conversation, I was like, I know that you talk about fasting with food the most. But I was like, there's other things we can fast for. And after our conversation, I was like, oh no, it so makes sense that it needs to be food. Like, I love what you said. And I just think that I've totally like come around to being like, okay, yeah, this year we're gonna try something new. We're gonna go.
You're so awesome. I love it. Well, it's all thanks to glorify God. It's all thanks to my Catholic family. I'm just going to tell you. And I look back at my family and I'm like, this is what I want to build with my family. I want this Catholic bent. I want people to say, oh, they're Catholic, whether it's with disdain or with praise, whatever it is. I just want them to know without me talking. She's a faster. Like, I don't know what they do in that Catholic world, but she fasts all the time. She's praying all the time. Like, and she's so nice. That's what I want.
I love that. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you and get to know you. And I really hope that some other people from Idaho, besides my aunt, would take your course. I mean, I am so in on it. I love everything you've been talking about. And it's just so amazing. So I thank you so much for coming on the show. And
thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, and God bless your pregnancy. God bless your third child. Amazing. We got more Catholic families coming into play here. That's wonderful.
We might have an Easter baby. So we're due 2 days before or 2 days after Easter. So the Tuesday after Easter.
Oh, I'll be praying for you, Natalie. Thank you for having me on. I'm just so appreciative.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Desert Wanderers. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up as well as subscribe down below. We're produced by Salt and Light Radio, so you can find us on social platforms at Salt and Light Radio or Desert Wanderers Podcast. We produce episodes every week and we launch them for you on Wednesdays. So make sure to tune in for next week's episode and we'll see you then.